All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the House Committee on Gov.Ops and Military Affairs. We're here this morning to see an amendment to H470, is that what we're getting started on this morning? Yes, H470, the miscellaneous alcoholic beverages laws. So, Mr. Anderson, welcome back.
Good morning, Tucker Anderson, Legislative Counsel. You have in front of you draft 1.2 of a committee further proposal of amendment to the Senate proposal of amendment for H470. So we're at the third instance. This is the last shot at amending this bill, I believe.
Ooh, yeah.
So you haven't added anything to the bill as it came out from the Senate, but instead you have pared it down to a shorter list of issues. So you kept the hard cider amendments. You have maintained the change in title and application of the festival permit and the educational sampling permit. So that's the change that's going to allow non-alcoholic beverage festivals to get a permit for their festivals, and for the alcoholic beverage festivals to continue getting a permit that isn't called a festival permit so that no one is confused. Correct. Correct. And noting that, you can skip all the way to, maybe not skip. In section 3, you have the increase of 10 to 20 for the maximum number of fourth class licenses. That's going to allow some of the manufacturers to go to more farmers markets. And then you have at the end of the bill the extension of the sunset of 7 VSA section 230 and the public safety impact study and report due January 15th, 2025. What was taken out? That would be the changes to the serving limitations, maximum number of locations, and offsite tasting rooms for the fourth class licensees, as well as the serving increase and decrease within the festival permit statute.
Representative Nugent?
I really think that the study part, taking out public health and Department of Health, removes kind of the intention of that, and would like see it put back in, because to ignore the public health impacts of alcohol is, I think, not doing our job.
So this was section 10 language. What was the conversation in the Senate? Because we had that in there, obviously, in what we passed originally.
I don't want to speak for the Department of Health, but their senior policy and legal advisor did testify in front of Senate Economic Development and said that they already have a comprehensive set of alcoholic beverage public health data, and that they likely would not do any additional study beyond what they already compile, and that the intonation was that they did not want to be involved in the study.
Is there a way to capture that information in conjunction with this report without requiring them to do more?
That was my understanding of the testimony, was that that was the suggestion, that if there was going to be a study about the public safety impacts, that the General Assembly would already have access to very detailed information about the public health impacts from alcoholic beverage consumption in the state, that the Department of Health can provide already through the data that it already collects.
Representative Byron, do you anticipate that these changes are going to be looked at favorably in your conversations with Commissioner Knight and our Senate colleagues?
I do.
Setting ourselves up for success. I'm conscious of the fact that this being the first instance, I mean, this is kind of, if we adopt this, that's it. This is the bill.
My conversations with both Charles Martin and Commissioner Knight were very positive to the structure of this. I also communicated with the chair of the Senate Committee of Jurisdiction. She is aware of the action being taken with this restructuring. And Commissioner Knight also communicated Representative McCoy about making sure that this we need to have.
And Representative Hango, you had expressed some concern yesterday, I think, about those tasting room changes in particular, just removing that. Are you comfortable with the
Yes,
bill once we get that out of there?
thank you. And I've also spoken with the commissioner.
Representative.
You were gonna find out for sure, fourth class licenses still have to be approved by municipality.
Yes, but not for the issuance of the license. So there's a difference between issuing and conditioning the licenses and then having regulatory authority over, for example, where a tasting room can be located or whether alcoholic beverages can even be served at a farmer's market. And for those two issues, municipalities do have regulatory authority in Title 24. So for the farmers markets, that would fall under municipal ordinance authority governing consumption of alcoholic beverages in public spaces and having open containers in public spaces, which are both in 24 VSA section 2291.
Just a continuation of that, because I sit on our select board in Milton. I know we run all the licenses through us, but I believe the language we've been given as we do that, if I understand correctly, is you sort of can't stop it because it's a state process. We're merely a conduit. Is that a correct?
Very similar to cannabis, the way that the language is written for the issuance and conditioning of licenses by the local control commissioners is that the forms and procedures are provided by the state.
Right.
And the municipality can condition the issuance of a license on public nuisance ordinances or ordinances governing entertainment, places of entertainment. And those are the only bases that you have to condition a license on. And if those ordinances are violated, you can apply to the state to have the state license revoked. There are express callouts in Title VII for some of the licenses saying that there must be approval from the local control commissioners. So special events permits are one example that the department pointed out in the Senate. But fourth class licenses, at least when I was reviewing the statute and the definitions yesterday, are not one of those where there is an express call out that the local control commissioners have to grant approval.
Perfect. Thank you. That's how I understood it. So, yeah, thank you. Good.
And I mean, for the other pieces that we're kind of toggling in and out of the other conversations, for those of you who are new this year, the miscellaneous alcohol conversations or miscellaneous DLL conversations, we always view these as sort of living document. There's kind of always an ongoing conversation about these things where we make some minor changes, some medium changes, on occasion some larger ones. So the conversations that we removed from here will certainly be touched on next year, but we'll have time to really be cerebral about them.
Any other questions or input before we make our decision here? Well, if you're ready to go, Representative Byron, I'd say let's go ahead and would entertain a motion to I guess we would find favorable the amendment to the Senate proposal of amendment to our proposal. Further amendment there to draft 3.2. That's what we're looking at here.
3.2
No, it's
or
1.2. Draft one, ours is.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at.
Oh, yep, that's right. That
Ours
was
is
the Senate. Yep, yep.
That was the Senate's.
Yep.
My apologies. So
I didn't-
that's why I always double check.
I was like, that's not what I mean.
Because you have a record of action.
I do, but we usually do a straw poll.
Right, so this actually is, so since, if it would be a straw poll if we were just concurring, but since we're going to for the proposal, we'll get the record. I'm starting to get the hang of this now.
Trying to get our feet under us.
All
That
right,
was a good explanation.
Yeah,
because I
no,
didn't
it's,
know
if we
why.
were just concurring with
Yeah.
their.
Got it.
yeah,
Then
then we
it's
get
straw, but
straw
since
poll.
we're doing more
Got it.
structural.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is us telling the clerk to put something new in the,
Yeah.
It only comes up often, like right at the end of the session, and you're always focused on other things, right?
Yes.
All right. So
So the motion is to find the proposal of amendment with further amendment to draft number 1.2, H470, favorable.
all right.
So moved.
Any further discussion? All right. Seeing none, the clerk shall commence to call the roll.
Representative Byron,
Yes.
Representative Boyden, yes. Representative Hango.
Yes.
Representative Morgan.
Yes.
Representative Hooper Brownston.
Yeah.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
Representative Chase.
Yes.
Representative Waters Evans.
Yes.
Representative Cooper Randolph. Representative Nugent.
Yes.
Representative Higley.
Yes.
Representative McCarthy.
Yes.
11-0-1.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, team.
Obviously, Representative Byram will continue to shepherd this along. Representative Nugent, I meant to say this sooner, but I share your concern about the Department of Health being involved in, or us at least getting access to that data. So I think that'll be something good for us to, as these issues come along, to sort of, we're going to have to be the watchdogs, I think, on that aspect of the policy. But your concern was not lost on me. Great. So we're next going to switch gears to H291. And we had looked at this yesterday. This is our cybersecurity council. And I believe I saw Becky come in. She's just behind in my office. I said, do you want to come up just in case we need to ask you anything, Becky? Thank you so much for joining us. Right. Great. So, Becky, thanks for joining us. I think we're waiting yesterday when we pushed pause on this for some feedback that Representative Chase was going to get. Do you want to do a report out for us?
It's a short report. I talked with ADS and the CISO, and they support the changes. So they feel that getting this committee stood up and getting the ball rolling is an important first step, and we can work on additional requirements in the future. But getting it stood up is the important part. So they support the language as passed the Senate.
Right. Well, since this is up today, do you feel ready to report the Senate changes on the floor?
Yep.
Okay, great. Committee, so this one, since this would be a motion to concur, we can do a straw poll unless anybody has any further thoughts. Great. So all those in favor of concurring with the Senate proposal? Looks like that's a unanimous 11-0-1. So you can.
I did hear from Rep. Cooper from Randolph that he supports it also. So.
Great. And you can give it a 12-0 if you get if you've gotten a sign off from him with the straw poll. That's a little looser than our votes in committee. I did confirm that with the clerk actually in one of our previous votes.
All right.
That's rigidity. I was a little worried that somebody was going to ask is I can't remember which straw poll it was, but one of the ones I had reported was when Representative Waters Evans was not able to join us because of technology and it was like, I got your straw poll vote after I reported it on the floor as a unanimous 12-0. So it's always.
As long as it was true, it's true.
Yeah. I think it was. I think it was on our S17 concurred. All right. So committee, we are now ahead of schedule. It's amazing how that happens all of a sudden. So we've got positions on 470-291. So we're going to have amendments to S39 starting in a few minutes. This is a good moment for me to talk a little bit about the agenda and the calendar. So I made myself a little spreadsheet while I was getting my morning coffee this morning to keep track of all the bills from our committee that we still have kind of out there in some stage of being passed by the Senate or the House. And I just wanted to make sure that the reporters of the bills are watching and aware of what's going on. So this is my opportunity to update folks a little bit. So let me start with Representative Boyden. So the H 476, which is Criminal Justice Council changes for the Domestic Violence and Fatality Review Commission case. That bill has some, was reworked a bit by the Senate, I think, but it's not hugely substantive changes if I understand my conversations with Senator Hardy. So we'll hear that this afternoon at 1:45. It's on notice today, and I just want to warn everybody that you don't want to get stuck in the way that I did. I was just reading the calendar yesterday, and since our House Resolution 11 was on notice, it was my thinking that I had yesterday evening to write the floor report.
So that was a quick.
The speaker let me know at lunchtime that she had discussed with leadership pulling it up off the calendar because she's just trying to keep things moving along. And where we can do that for efficiency, she is doing that. So anything that's on notice could theoretically be pulled up if there's agreement between leadership around a rule suspension. So H 476, I think, may fall in that bucket. We'll see. To be prepared on that one.
Yeah, just
They're probably
ready.
after lunch.
Yeah. So we'll.
They would love though if that's on there.
Yeah, and these would be after lunch. Anything that we're going to hear after lunch that might come up off notice, that would be in that boat. The next one I had on my list that I'm watching was H 125. That's our boards and commissions bill. In the Senate today. Senator Hardy, I texted her this morning. It's my belief that they will suspend their rules to message that over. So we're going to take a look at that this afternoon at 1:15 and hear about their proposal of amendment and try and take a position on that.
I don't think it's
I think the one substantive thing they did there was there's some ethics language, I think, to clarify who the Ethics Commission covers that we'll get. So following that one, Representative Maruki. Representative Higley and I have been in communication about H 517, the Duxbury Moretown Fire District bill that we got out yesterday. I texted Representative Kornheiser, and she's going to try to get that on her committee's agenda. I don't think they'll need long with it, but it was referred to them yesterday.
And you said the Senate also took a look at it, right?
Yeah, I believe Senate Gov.Ops had it on their agenda, so that they either did or are going to today in preparation for hopefully getting rules suspended on their side to pull it up as soon as we message it and move it so that we don't have any people stranded without the ability to get a water hookup into EFUD. I think we should all say EFUD as much as possible.
That's one of the better acronyms.
actually Steve's had a pretty good one with that. Not
Elmer
Elmer,
Fudd.
but
I know, I like that.
I'll give him that one.
So H 490 we'll take a look at the Senate proposal when we get back from lunch at 1:00, and that will be up this afternoon. It is is up for action, but I'm going to make sure that we're doing that after we've had a chance to look at the Senate proposals. Representative Nugent, we're about to head into S39 amendments, so I'm sure you're well aware that's up for third reading. House Resolution 11 will be up for third reading. The other bill that's kind of, the other two bills that are sort of hanging out there, I don't really have an update, are H 429 is up for second reading today. That's our elections bill. I thought that might move through the Senate process a little faster, but it got stuck a day in appropriations. So we probably won't be able to finish work on that by the time we adjourn is how I'm reading the calendar, but that'll be hanging out there. So just be aware. I'm not sure if the Senate will message H 270 over to us. I think it's up for third reading today. So if that's messaged, we would have an opportunity to concur tomorrow. So I think that's my list. That's a lot of bills for the last couple of days.
Yeah.
What was 270, Mike?
Oh, the cannabis.
Oh, yeah.
I believe I shared it to your Gmail because it's a Google Doc. Byron M.
Oh, that one?
Yeah. HGOMA and recession bill tracking. Copy that and you can send it to me. All right, great. So we're now at 9:30, the scheduled time for us to begin hearing amendments on our 39 bill. So Representative Donahue is up first. Welcome to House Gov.Ops again, Representative Donahue.
Thank you. Impressive maintaining of the schedule. It's 9:30.
So is it my understanding you have two amendments for us
Yes,
to consider? Okay, I just want to make sure the committee is oriented to that. So which,
I think the one that's titled, sorry, Representative Van Donahue, I think the one that's titled working group is probably the better one to take up first. Neither of them are very complicated. So this one, before you even look at or go back to the language that would be struck, kind of just remove yourself from knowing the bill and you assume you're Jesse Q. Public and just listen to the sentence standing alone. Drafts of the working group's report shall be confidential unless publicly released. Like, whoa, they're looking at compensation for their own body and they're engaging in a secret process? They're going to hide their drafts in progress that they're discussing until they decide to make it officially public? What are they thinking? And that was my reaction when I read it. And so before we even, had gotten into the debate while we're on the floor, I shot an email to Legislative Council and said, "Will you please prepare an amendment for me striking that statement, just striking it." And then Jen sent me a little email back and said, "Well, actually, that's a line that Legislative Council requested." Like, yeah, we better talk then. Got up and had a little conversation, and she explained the problem, the issue, which has to do with more generally, it has nothing to do specific to this bill, but an overall problem with public requests for documents for things that are still work product that haven't gone to the committee yet. This is not about documents that the committee is looking at as drafts. And you may already know this, but this is what I learned. And it's about saving Legislative Council from having to repeatedly defend why their works in progress need to remain confidential until, and what publicly released meant was not we, the working group, are deciding to now make this public and release it. It means when it comes to the group, which is therefore public, as we would normally assume. So I suggested, and Jen looked at alternative language that would make it clear as to what was actually, make it clearer in the public view as to what the actual intent was. So the intent is to absolutely preserve what Legislative Council was requesting. And obviously you can hear from Legislative Council, but in our process, Legislative Council agreed that this completely provided what they needed and wanted. But I think it just words it in a way that makes it clearer publicly. And that's the wording that you have in front of you. Drafts of the working group's report that are in progress, but that have not yet been shared with the working group shall be confidential.
Sounds like a good clarification. We don't want to appear to the public that we're hiding anything, although we do want to give our Legislative Council the opportunity to do rough drafts before they actually put things before the committee. That seems to make some sense. So Jen, could you, well, I guess first, does anybody have any questions for Representative Donahue about the intent of the amendment? Okay, so Jen, could you maybe switch places on this one, and we'll probably have to do this twice with the two amendments. Thanks for being with us.
Jen Kirby, Legislative Counsel. So I think Representative Donahue did a great job of explaining both the issue and what we were going for, what I was going for with the language. I think this is kind of may tee up a further conversation with this committee and others going forward about trying to put language like this more globally into affecting the work of both Legislative Counsel and the Joint Fiscal Office. Because there have been increasingly reports and requests and fairly insistent and ongoing requests from press, from administration, from public for drafts of things that we are still putting together and still getting input from the committee about what they want in the report, and in some cases getting reports that we may be working on with outside consultants that are sending drafts to us to say, does this look right? For the Joint Fiscal Office, are we using the right assumptions about Vermont population or other materials? And releasing those prematurely can be misleading because it doesn't represent what the legislature is doing or what the accurate estimates might be. So this is a first foray into this idea of trying to put something in writing that says, please let the staff do our work. And then when we actually have something put together, then we share that with the committee, and that is all public. So the intent was not to have the committee working on anything that would be not shared publicly when the committee is reviewing it, but to really allow staff the room to do our work, have our drafts edited before they become publicly consumed.
It sounds like this is an issue that's much bigger than the legislative service working group.
Yes, exactly. But we were talking about it when I was doing the original draft of S39 back, I think in December. And I thought, well, great, we'll try this language out. And then I don't think there was really any discussion about it. So it wasn't even really on my radar until Representative Donahue brought it to my attention yesterday. And I assured her it was nobody's nefarious intent in the legislature to hide anything from the public. It was really on me. And I think her wording more elegantly describes the intent here and the idea behind it.
Any questions from the committee? All right.
I'll make a motion then that we approve draft 1.1 dated 5/10/23 at 5:18.
So Representative Higley moves that we approve the Donahue Working Group amendment. That's draft number 1.1. Any further discussion? I'm noting that Representative Byron stepped out for just a moment, and I'd love to get his vote since I believe he's just standing right there. So let's pause for just a moment while I let him know we're going to take a position here. All right, so Representative Higley has made the motion that we find the working group of draft 1.1 favorable. And I think there aren't any other hands. The clerk can commence to call the roll.
Representative Byron?
Yes.
Representative Boyden, yes. Representative Mingo?
Yes.
Representative Morgan?
Yes.
Representative Hooper Burlington?
Yes.
Representative Murphy?
Yes.
Representative Chase?
Yes.
Representative Waters Evans?
Yes.
Representative Hooper Randolph? Representative Nugent?
Yes.
Representative Higley?
Yes.
Representative McCarthy?
Yes.
11-0-1.
As much as I thought I was getting the hang of things, since this is a floor amendment, we just need a straw poll on this, right? Okay, we actually don't need a recorded action on this. We're getting a little too formal. But that's great, that's fine.
I think that counts. So
Yeah, I think that was a very,
You just extended the bar instead of going below.
Extra layers.
there were too many moving parts there. I just couldn't keep it all straight.
It's a struggle.
So this is unnecessary.
And so Representative Nugent, you've got that one. 1101. Okay, great. So Representative Donovan, would you like to go back and present your second?
Thank you very much. I see this next one sort of quasi-technical. The first one was truly technical. I don't see this one as any kind of substantive change to the bill. But as we went through different areas that the committee did look at, or at least looked at to some degree, and what the working group was going to then dig further into for its report back, it did seem that the question of comparison, not just of straight salaries, but benefits compensation with both the median and mean income or salaries, benefits, compensation structure of Vermonters made sense to include. It's a component of all of these things. I think it just adds one more element of thoroughness to the list of things that the group should be looking at and review. So it takes the identical language under the former E, which has now become relettered because of amendments yesterday, but what used to be E, it takes that identical language, but instead of compare to those of other state legislatures, it's a comparison to both the mean and median of Vermont salaries, benefits, and compensation structure.
Instead of, not in addition to.
No, it's in addition to.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I used the language.
So that was my.
Sorry, because I said G, right.
So it's not in lieu of.
No, it's not in lieu of. It's adding another letter. It was using the same language to make it a parallel.
I would be surprised if they didn't do this anyway. Yeah. But I think maybe or my reaction to it. Does anybody want to ask any questions to Representative Donovan? The salary, benefits, and compensation structure of Vermont journalists can be compared to the mean compensation benefits.
Question with Representative Jesus.
Well, I might, if no one has any questions for Representative Donahue about this one, I might just we'll ask our legislative counsel one more time to. It was a little disconcerting to hear the photo. Yeah.
No pun intended.
Shutter shock. Welcome back, Jen. Representative Waters, go ahead.
I just have a quick question. So it says how the salaries, benefits, and compensation structure in the General Assembly compared to the mean and median compensation and benefits of Vermont residents. Does it matter that it doesn't also say salaries? Just if we're going to be super precise.
Jen Carvey, Legislative Counsel again. I had talked about that with Representative Donahue, what the reason that the language says compensation and benefits of Vermont residents is to try to take into account that Vermont residents don't necessarily all get a salary. Some get an hourly wage. And so we're looking at capturing both hourly and salaried employees, while in the legislature, what you get, we call a salary. And so for the legislature, it's salary, benefits, and compensation structure.
Okay.
So how that's all set up. And for the Vermont residents, we'd be looking at their compensation and their benefits, but we don't know what their structure necessarily looks like.
I think the structure is dotting i's and crossing t's, but that would also take people who have commission work as well. Commission wages.
If they're considered
Financial services.
compensation, I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's really looking at how the Department of Labor captures information, looking at the income of Vermont residents, or wages, I think is the language they use.
Could the words in the Vermont General Assembly does that apply just to the elected members, or is that also all of the staff that work for the legislature?
In the existing language for the study committee, the lead in language talks about the current compensation and benefits offered to members of the General Assembly, including, and then it goes through a list of things, the last of which before yesterday was how the salaries, benefits, and compensation structure in the Vermont General Assembly compared to those of other state legislatures. So I read it as the members, because the whole point of this is to look at issues addressing members of the General Assembly and not staff. And there's talk about staff, but how to support the members through staff.
Any other questions before we take a position on this one?
On another motion for approval of draft 1.2 on the 10th and 5:38 PM.
Representative Higley moves that we find the second Donahue amendment on Vermont resident compensation being added to the working groups items. All those in favor of recommending? It's like 12-0. Any opposed that I somehow missed? All right. Representative Nugent, 12-0 in favor. Thank you very much, Representative Donahue.
Thank you. Appreciate the report.
Oh, we're so efficient this morning. Loving it. Representative Harrison is up next. Thanks for joining us.
Morning.
I want to say, Representative Harrison, before you introduce your amendment, I just want to say that on the floor yesterday, there was the implication maybe that this committee might not have been patient with the three amendments that you brought us previously. And I just want to say I appreciated each one of those, and I thought we were very welcoming. So I'm not sure what happened there.
I was want an example.
I come as a strikeout because it's a different day.
Different days. Good morning, Representative Jim Harrison from Chittenden. Thank you. And I so pleased that you're on a roll this morning. So I feel my chances are good. You're always welcome to represent. And in reference to yesterday, I actually thought, and I think Ledge Council could confirm this, that I actually thought about putting them all together, but then I thought, maybe it would be a little confusing, and so just thought it better to keep them separate. So I didn't put them together as one amendment. So, but today I have one amendment. It's always bothered me that expenses are like, we get these flat per diems, whether you share a room with somebody and the cost is significantly less, or because the way the statute is, this is what you get. But I get it. The pay is not great, as you folks well understand. But we're changing that in S39. And so what this amendment does is effective in 2025, not next year, but 2025, when the pay raises take place. To me, it makes our compensation and benefits very transparent. And by doing that, it's not, you don't get $69 a day for food if you spend $30. It has a couple benefits to doing that. One, if you tell your constituents, well, what does the legislator get paid? Most of us would probably say, well, $811 a week right now when we're in session. And we do get reimbursement for expenses. Well, we're entitled to allowances for expenses, not the actual cost of expenses. Last session, we made a change on mileage. It used to be under the old statute that even if you carpooled, you could put in, I'm not saying people did, although I do know of a case that was well publicized a few years ago where a former member of this body used to put in for mileage, even though that individual was carpooling with another person. So why doesn't the same rule work on other expenses? If you share a room with someone and the cost is half of what it would be otherwise, and half of what the per diem allowance is,
Why would you do that? But the additional benefit of going totally this way is, one, it saves the state money because there's still a cap on how much you can claim. You can't spend $100 on food each day. Cap would still be $69. Secondly, so more often than not, it would end up being less than that. But secondly, and important for all of us and important for the state, is it would no longer be taxable because it would qualify as an accountable plan. And that's the change we made on mileage last year. Accountable plans are essentially, under the IRS, essentially plans, Ledge Council will correct me or Joint Fiscal will correct me if I'm wrong, but you're accountable on your expenses. It's not a flat amount. That's why today, because of a federal change, if we have $800 a week in expenses, we take off the mileage because that's accountable because it's actual mileage. And then the rest is taxable. And that's why when you submit your expenses, it will say, $150 non-taxable, $650 taxable for, overnight lodging and meals. So this would be non-taxable totally because you would submit actual expenses. And it would also save the state the employer's share of Social Security and Medicare, which is not a small number. The state is paying 7.65%, Dan will correct me if I got it wrong, I believe, for both on everything that is treated as wages, which our expenses are, and they show up on our W-2. Not the mileage, because that's accountable, but the others because they're flat per diems. So this amendment would go into effect when the pay increases. To me, it's about transparency. We're not, we only get paid this, but we make a little money on expenses. And I just think, and that was my motivation for doing the option. But now that we're going to increase our pay, and let's be straightforward and honest with people what we're actually getting paid, and include expenses for reimbursement. So I know that's a long-winded way of saying my motivation for offering the amendment.
Representative Cooper, I think your hand was up first. Hands all around, so go ahead.
Yesterday, an amendment, we talked about saving money by not being here as much. And, there's always another side to that. Mm-hmm. So I think we should hear from administrators about how much extra work that's going to create, both for us and for the people doing the accounting. If I have a week's worth of, I eat breakfast, I eat lunch, it seems like that's a lot of work. And it's not uncommon in the state government itself to just basically have the maximum amount the contract allows granted for state employees, which quote unquote we are. It's a lot lower than that, I think, but such and such. So the scale on this of extra work created to save paying taxes to the state, which frankly, I don't know why we necessarily would want to avoid since we need money to allocate. Is a concern.
I understand. I'm talking about the big tax savings for this tax savings to the state is the FICA. But in response to your question, let me just say and I would encourage you to listen to legislative operations because they would be the ones that have to administer that. But we currently do both right now. Appropriations, if we come in on Mondays for the first 3 months of the session, we do not get, pay. It's part of our weekly pay that you get. We do not get per diems for expenses on Mondays. We do get actual. If I come in on Monday to work in appropriations, and I spend $9.50 for lunch. I put that in there. Legislative operations doesn't require a receipt. They have that prerogative to do that. We're not taxed on that $9.50. It's straight expense reimbursement. So members of appropriations are already doing a dual system. But you're welcome to talk to legislative operations. And I agree, if it's going to cost you more than you save, then it's obviously a legitimate concern. But I don't think in this case it will, because the savings on FICA and stuff for the employer share is significant.
Just immediately, I thought it might mean another person.
It will cover that, if that where it came to.
So I have two hands up over here. We have 5 minutes, and I want to get Mike Ferrand's feedback on this before we take a position. So let's keep the responses and the questions as quick as possible. Representative Waters Evans.
My first question was actually relating to that, and possibly he could answer it. And then the second was, I just wanted to know, so if we have this study, this work group, right, that's happening, I'm assuming they're not going to do all of this work, figure out a bunch of things, and then be like, here it is, and now we're just going to carry on with what we already decided to previously, correct? That's the intention of the study.
That'll be up to the legislators who are making that decision next year, which would be us.
Which we asked.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that we are going to take the results of that study and some action will be taken because of it. Of course, Mike's comment is important about the burden this is going to place on legislative operations. But other than that, I was wondering if it seems wise to make a change like this that could only exist for a year if the whole system is revamped shortly thereafter.
This is in essence half of the initial plan to give the option, right? Or is there substitute?
Yeah, in 2025, when our legislators' pay is increased, the option would go away. It would be reimbursed for actual expenses, which is, I believe, the way most of the world works, actual expenses. I had the good fortune to go to NCSL last summer. I got reimbursed for actual expenses. No more, no less.
Tracking. Thank you.
Be willing to just maybe answer the question about sort of whether doing it this way and actual expenses, what the administrative burden would look like, or sort of how this would affect the status quo. I don't know if you've had a chance to read Representative Harrison's amendment.
Mike Ferrand, Legislative Operations. I have. I can imagine this will increase our administrative burden and workload in processing 180 legislative expenses that we have to process each week daily. I would find it difficult to advise or help somebody who said share an apartment with 3 people and we all pitch in for groceries, and that's how we factor in our meals. I don't know how I would be able to advise people in that situation, but I do think that's pretty common. So this presents some administrative issues that we need to look at a little bit more and think about it and know what that looks like. I have to keep in mind that there's 180 legislators and 3 of us currently process the expenses for this. Creates a lot more detail.
Then there's chasing people down for seats.
Yes.
Yeah, there's the remission of receipts is something that popped into my mind.
So the speaker really wants us on the floor. So what I say is, unless anybody has anything burning, Representative Murwicky.
I'd like to make the motion to find this unfavorable.
Right. Any further discussion before we take a position? I want to say that I think that we should really look at this. I don't think we're ready to make the decision today. And so that's why I'm going to vote to yes on Representative Murwicky's motion to find this not favorable. But I really think that the study committee should be looking at how we actually get the expenses right. I think we took a step in the direction of the bill that you had on the wall with S39 itself, Representative Harrison. So I'm with you in this battle. And thank you for bringing this idea before us. Representative Hank.
Yeah, I want to thank you as well, because most people just really don't think about expenses. You know, we get our stipend, but I think you've brought an important point about transparency up for this committee and for the future working group to consider. Because we do want to be as transparent as possible to the public. And I just feel that that's something that maybe is not happening right now.
All right, so Representative Murwicki, your motion is finding this not favorable. So all of those who want to find the Harrison amendment not favorable, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All those opposed to the motion. So that's 9-3, Representative Nugent. Thank you all. That completes our work. I'll head up to the floor. Thank you.